It is such an honor to be introducing Professor Dr. Susmita Basu Majumdar to all of you. We've been working with her closely for some time now, and I can assure you that you're all in for a great treat today. She is a professor in the Department of Ancient Indian History Culture at the University of Calcutta, and she specializes in early Indian epigraphy and numismatics. Her research interests also include history of medicine and surgery and history of early Indian religion, especially Jainism, Ajivikism, and Shaivism. Pursuant to her academic interests, she has undertaken research at major museums in Europe, including the British Museum in London, the Ashmolean Museum in Oxford, as well as the Denmark National Museum, and also in leading museums in Asia, such as the Colombo National Museum in Sri Lanka and the Bangladesh National Museum in Dhaka. She has worked as the India coordinator at the Wilfrid Laurier University, Canada, on the project Buddhist Rebirth Narratives in Literary and Visual Cultures of Gandhar. She has been a recipient of distinguished fellowships at the Royal Numismatic Society in London, as well as fellowships at leading institutions in Paris and Berlin. She has authored several key works on ancient coins, inscriptions, and early Indian history, and co-edited volumes on medicine and economic history. Some of her more recent publications include Barabar and Nagarjuni Hills, a biography of twin sites, The Mauryas in Karnataka, Money and Money Matters in Pre-Modern South Asia with S.K. Bose, From Hindu Kush to the Salt Range, Mauryan, Indo-Greek and Indo-Scythian coin hoards, The Mahasthan Record Revisited, Querying the Empire from a Regional Perspective, and Transcending Boundaries, Pre-Modern Cultural Transactions Across Asia. Besides being an academician and a full-time professor, Professor Susmita is also an established poet and lyricist. She has authored 3 books on poetry and has penned lyrics for more than 50 songs. Today, she will be speaking on the urge for engraving words for posterity, exploring several epigraphic resources from early India, and concentrating on the human urge to engrave words, indeed a step towards immortality. And with that, I invite Professor Majumdar to take the dais.
First of all, a very good evening to all of you, respected Chairman Sir, Director General, Trustee Board members, and everybody present here in the audience, learned scholars, students, and ladies and gentlemen. At the outset, I would like to thank Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj Vastu Sangrahalaya, Mumbai, and the Museum Society of Mumbai, especially Mr. Sabyasachi Mukherjee, his whole team and committee members for inviting me to deliver this prestigious lecture, the 27th Karl J. Khandalavala Memorial Lecture. I am honored, and at the same time, looking at my predecessors who have delivered this prestigious talk in the past, I feel nervous. As it is, very few people understand the nuances of my core subject of specialization. Believe me, we are less than tigers. At the moment, the government should strive hard to save these toothless tigers, that is, the epigraphists. My specialization is epigraphy and numismatics. Epigraphists are depleting fast, and if not taken care, will soon vanish in 2 generations, at least in India. Inscriptions are being discovered almost every day, but experts who can read it are a handful. As it requires paleographic skills, that is, skill to decipher old script, then one needs linguistic skill for understanding them, and finally, historical sense to situate them in proper context. My intention today is not to highlight the significance of epigraphy as a discipline or the importance of creating epigraphists for future. Today, I would like to address the issue why any person had the urge to engrave for future generations to come. Is it only for the sake of seeking immortality? The person who seeks immortality will not be there to witness how he or she is being perceived by generations to come. Yet, why this urge to create a permanent place in the midst of impermanence? So that is the question we'll address today, and that's all the text that I have. So I'll just switch on to my presentation because I always love to speak directly to my audience. And here you are with the urge for engraving words for posterity. I think this topic actually reminds me directly of a very recent ad which we had for Incredible India. I think many of you will remember. It's not very late. It's sometime in 2010 that this ad came for Incredible India, and it was shot here in Mumbai. And Amir Khan gave this ad in Kanheri, cave number 3. And somebody was engraving something in Kanheri, and the ad said that, why are we engraving things on the monuments? So nobody asked, why does a person have this urge to engrave? Because he was just expressing his love to the partner, but why do you need to engrave it on the walls? Why the public display of affection? Is it the permanence for the relationship? What are you seeking? So here, I would like to ask some of the ancient inscriptions, why they were engraved. So let us undertake a journey through the inscriptions to understand what was happening in ancient India. So here we will begin with something which is very difficult, that is brevity of life. So when we have brevity of life versus desire for the quest for eternity, we have to talk about epigraphic productions. Actually, these were meant to endure. They were more or less on durable objects that we know very well. So why does one engrave words? That's the biggest question we have to ask right now. The intention to communicate something publicly, to seek immortality, the desire to make message eternal or transcend the boundaries of time, desire to perpetuate memories, especially when we have memorial inscriptions. But visibility is also very important, because by incising the words, one seeks visibility. You want it to be visible to your audience. And of course, the target audience is large and often transcending time. As we have heard, that it will be beyond your time limit. So let us talk about the first person who thought of doing it in India. His name is Priyadarshi, the first ruler in the Indian subcontinent who thought of engraving his words for the masses and even for posterity. Now, I'm showing you the map of the Ashokan inscription, and you might be wondering, why am I saying Priyadarshi was the first person to engrave it on the stones? This is something which we have to remember, that we find Ashokan inscriptions from all over India, like Indian subcontinent, right from Afghanistan till Karnataka. I'll come to this a little later, but which Ashoka are we talking about? There are multiple Ashokas. Ashoka of the Ashokan edicts, the Sri Lankan Buddhist chronicles, which were written after almost 300 years, over a period of half a century. The Buddhist texts in Sanskrit or North India, like the Ashoka Vanadan, which was, Ashoka was 3rd century BC, and this was written, Ashoka Vanadan, in the 2nd century CE. And of course, we have Ashoka of the Brahmanical Puranas and other texts. Now, this you might be really aware of. When we look at the Ashokan inscription, you have the major rock edicts, which are a set of 14. And they have been engraved on these places, It is just the border of the empire. So whenever you get into the empire, you see these huge rocks been engraved with 14 sets of edicts, and this is your emperor. So he wanted the people to know about his ideas, and of course, in Pakistan you have Shahbaz Kadi and Manshera. Then you come down here, you have Kalsi. Then here in Odisha, you have Dhauli and Jaugar. Here in southern India, you have Eragodi and Sanati. And here in the western part, you have Girnar and Sopara. All of you know this. But have you ever noticed that all of them are in twins? So all the sites are a set of 2, except for Kalsi. So did Kalsi also have a twin? Of course, yes. That was the project. He had 2 edicts engraved everywhere. Now, where did we get the name of Ashoka first? It's in Maski. It's around 2015-16, when a person named C. Beedon was searching for gold in this whole area, and he came across this stone. This is the one where Ashokan inscription was engraved, and this is Maski, which is in the Lingsur Taluk of the Roychand district, Karnataka. A distant view, you can just see Maski here, and once you enter, you have the name of Ashoka here, in the edict here. Now, let us see Priyadarshi versus Ashoka. So the first ruler who for the first time thought of communicating his ideas to the subject at length by directly addressing them, mentioned his name as Ashoka only 4 times. And 284 times he mentions Devanang Priya, which is the title, the epithet. And 189 times he mentions himself as Priyadarshi. And only 4 times as Ashoka. Still we prefer to call him Ashoka. Let's see why. He, of course, had 2 names, Priyadarshi and Ashoka. Ashoka was not the king's preferred name. He liked to call himself, as Patrick Olival thinks, liked others to call him Priyadarshi. Because, there is a site in Madhya Pradesh called Panguraria. At Panguraria, you get the name, you get the whole phrase, Priyadasi Nama Raja. So his name definitely was Priyadashi and not Ashoka. Like Ashoka was a less preferred name. And even his grandson, Dasharatha, does not mention this, like he mentions Devanang Piya Dasarathena. So after Devanang Piya, which is an epithet, the place comes for the name. So Ashoka mentions Devanang Piya, Priyadasi Raja. And even to his Greek and Aramaic subjects, he mentioned the name Piyadasis, and it was never translated into Greek or Aramaic. So definitely we know that it was his name, Priyadarshi. So you would like to see Panguraria. Here we are in the Sarumaru Caves, Panguraria, and here is the location, and you can see the inscription. There are 2 inscriptions, one here and the one here, and the one which mentions Ashoka's name as Piyadasi reads, Piyadasi Nama Raja Kumara Samva Manema Deshe Upanitha Vihara Yatyaye. So Ashoka has come for a pleasure tour, Vihara Yatra, to Panguraria, to one of the Kumaras, after finishing his 256 nights of pilgrimage. Now he is on a pleasure tour to his son, that is the Kumara, or to his governor, who is a Kumara. Now, the best part is that in the recent book, Patrick Olival says, I probably should have used Piyadasi in the title of this book, but then nobody would have known whom I am talking about. The victory of Ashoka over Piyadasi is total and irreversible. What a pity. He could have named his book Piyadasi. And of course, I promise that when I write my book, it will be Piyadasi alias Ashoka and not only Ashoka. Now, we will come to this issue. What did Ashoka think about his own inscription? Why was he engraving them when most of the people did not know how to read and write? Because most of his subjects did not know how to read Brahmi. This was a mega project which was done. You need a lot of logistics when you're writing from Afghanistan to Karnataka. You have to send scribes, you have to send engravers, you have to give them money for engraving, and so on and so forth. So, what was in his mind? He uses the word chirang tisteya, that is, for the long lasting of the edicts I am writing them, not right for the contemporary people, also for the posterity. So here we have the words for the posterity. He realized the importance of power of the written words, and which no doubt excel over the power of the oral. Recourse to writing helped in the consolidation of the state administration and communication with distant areas. Of course, it is the power of communication and the communication of power. So there is no doubt a highly successful idea to communicate the emperor's vision. And of course, we have to now question, is Priyadarshi alone who thought about the afterlife existence of the patron's act or voice? No. Dasharatha also thought about it, because they both use the term Achandamashulyam, that is till the sun, the moon exist, this will still remain, This is a very common phrase which we get in the later inscriptions as well. So now we have to really think that about the ephemeral character of the orality. In India, ephemerality or the oral communication was never an issue because we almost disseminate our text through orally, because the Vedas were actually memorized and they were passed on from generation to generation, and we know that they were written much later. So orality loomed large, but still he thought of engraving. Most of the text, when were transmitted orally, he thought of writing, but still, when you read the inscriptions, you read the phrase sotaviye, that is to be heard. It's not to be read. Most of the time the phrase comes, sotaviye, to be heard. So, definitely when you say to be heard, it means to be orated by somebody, to be heard. So he had to employ orators as well, not only engrave them, not only take the whole project of doing the whole engraving, but also employ orators at every level to read. So I'll now demonstrate, you might be really wondering how. This is the site of Nuttur in Karnataka, where we also get the name Ashoka. There are only 4 sites, Nittur, Odegala and Maski in Karnataka and Gujarat in Madhya Pradesh. These are the only sites where we get the name Ashoka. Here we get it. At Nittur, you can see it's in the middle of the field and you have to go round and round to read it. And it's at that bottom, here is the inscription you can see. So how can one go below the rock and read it like this? It's so cumbersome. So it was not meant to be read. It was meant to be orated and to be heard by someone. So Ashoka actually never allowed anybody to write their names. Never do we get the names of the Mahamatras. We do not get the names of other people. We only get few names which he wanted to write in the inscriptions. But we get the name of one person from South India, from 3 sites. His name was Chapada. But we want to know who is this Chapada who actually thought of writing his name. Did Ashoka allow him actually to write his name? One come across very few names in these records. So these are the questions which I'll be asking. Was it his urge to engrave his name on the records? Chapada's urge, he wanted to write his own name. Did he seek permission from the ruler to do so? Were any of the scribes ever named? Why did I ask this question? Because Chapada was a scribe. He was a lipikara. So a normal scribe writing his name, there are so many inscriptions, nobody is writing the name. How did Chapada write his name on the inscription? So let's see the sites where we get this. This is the site of Jatinga Rameshwar. And here you have to climb up to the temple to see. There are 2 hills here. And here is the name of Chapada. And all the inscriptions are engraved horizontally on the ground. These 3 sites, Jatinga Rameshwar, Siddhapur and Brahmagiri, about which I will be talking. All these 3 sites, the engraver chooses the ground to write, not the walls to write vertically. So at the end, you see here, I have marked it white. Here is the name of Chapada. We also get the name of Chapada here. So this inscription is written in Brahmi characters. But the name of Chapada, which has been marked here, is in Kharoshti characters. I hope all of you know that Kharoshti was only limited to the northwestern territories of Pakistan. So Shahbaz Kadi and Manshara are the only Kharoshti edicts of Ashoka which we get. So why suddenly here down south in Karnataka, where nobody can read Kharoshti, Chapada was writing his name in Kharoshti? What was happening actually? This is something very interesting. So let us see the rest of the sites. This is Brahmagiri. And here in the Ashokan inscription, you get the name of Chapada in Kharoshti. This is Siddhapur, here also you get. Now, what exactly is the context? Here, Ashoka's own son, his heir apparent, was stationed in one of the sites called Suvarnagiri in Karnataka. All of us know Karnataka is famous for its gold reserves. Ashoka also wanted to have all the gold. So he stationed his son, his heir apparent, Aryaputra, not named in the inscriptions. Once again, in the inscription, Ashoka does not even name his son. So he is addressed only as Aryaputra. And this Aryaputra has been instructed how to write inscriptions in the new territories of Isila. What is the meaning of Isila? Isila is Brahmagiri, Siddhapur and Chatingarameshwar. So this is a territory where his son, his heir apparent, is going to write the inscriptions. And there is a message that go greet the Mahamatras of Isila, ask them about their good health, inquire about their good health, and then say that Devanang Piya Piyadasi has sent this message. So this was a message written by the scribe, a letter written by the scribe to Ashoka's son, where actually he gave the instructions. And at the end, he signed off by saying that Lipi Karena Chapada. So Chapada is the writer of this letter, and by mistake the whole letter got engraved on stone because somewhere this message was lost, which is the portion which should be engraved, because most of them could not read it. So sometimes, when there are mistakes, they give us a lot of information. Ashoka would have never allowed any of the Lipikaras to write. Now, when there is the urge to engrave, we have also to see whether there is an urge to erase something. If somebody has written it for the posterity, would you like to erase? Let us again see one of the Ashokan sites, which is very popular site in Bihar. This is the site of Barabar. And you have heard that I have a book on this. And this is the site of Barabar, which is very famous. And you have seen the photographs in the books of the Lomash Rishi caves. And they are wonderfully engraved. And here you get the label inscription saying Gorathagiri. But this is not an Ashokan inscription, of course. Because in the Ashokan inscription, the name of this particular site is Khalatika Parvat. So the name of this place is Khalatika. Here you can see the eraser. Now, who erased this? Of course, somebody who could read it. Because what is the portion which is erased? It is only Ajivike Dina. So somebody did not want people to read that these beautiful caves were actually given to the Ajivikas, because Ashoka donated them to Ajivikas. You can see the rest of the inscription has not been erased, only the Ajivika thing has been erased. Even in the other texts also you can see only this portion, Ajivike Hidina, has been erased deliberately. Now this is again another cave from there. Now, who erased it? Basically, this is the question. Now somebody, as I said, who did not want people to know that it was given to the Ajivikas. So, how do we relate it? Because there was a ruler in Odisha whose name was Kharavela. And Kharavela went up to this place and he devastated this place, and he writes in his inscription that I went up to Rajgir, this area, and up to Gorathagiri I went. And there I brought the Kalinga Jina back to Kalinga. So the Nandas had taken the Kalinga Jina and he took a revenge and he got his Kalinga Jina back. He names it as Gorathagiri, and we get this label inscription Gorathagiri in Barabar. So this helps us to understand that Kharavela actually went up till here and identified this as Gorathagiri hill. And now, why did he do so? Because he was a Jaina. And the Jainas were actually did not like the Ajivikas at all, because the Ajivikas and the Jainas were adversaries. So he did not want, he just erased the word Ajivika. So in all probabilities, this was done by Kharavela. So this is something which is again very important. Now, when I talk about the urge to engrave, we have to think about the opposed pole, that is the necessity to engrave. Is there a necessity to engrave as well? Of course, yes. Most of the inscriptions come out of the necessity. Like one of the inscriptions, which is on a copper plate, from Chhattisgarh region, there was a ruler who ruled in the middle of the 5th century CE. His name is Narendra. He issued a copper plate charter, gave a land grant, and in this he writes that there was a conflagration or a fire in the house of the Dhoni, and the Talapatra Shashanam got burnt in this. So you know the original inscription was on a Talapatra, palm leaf manuscript, and it was burnt and perished. So there was a necessity to give it again, reissue it on a copper plate. Now, is it so easy to give it again? Not that easy, because you have to go by inquiring whether this land really belonged to this person. So definitely there was an official probe into the matter. And when it was found that yes, this document actually belonged to this person, then it was given. So the inscription mentions everything, you know. There was an official probe and finally it was found that yes, it is correct. And then again this copper plate was given. So this is actually necessity. There was no urge actually, but there was a necessity to engrave. Again going back to the Barabar Hills, which I showed in Bihar, here we have the urge to engrave by certain pilgrims. So here you see this is the Ashokan inscription at Nagarjuni. This is the inscription of Dasharatha at Nagarjuni, which is Ashoka's grandson's inscription. And just below this you have some scribblings. And this mentions a yogi named Karma Martanda Yogi who came here with his 3 sons. And he wanted to write, you know, it was like his urge to write his name here, that he has come for pilgrimage here. And we also have the urge to write right now, you know, people like Atmaram Sonar and Umesh Sao Sonar, everybody wanted to write their names on the Barabar Hills. So here we have several other inscriptions. So here comes the urge actually to engrave. Now, when talking about the pilgrims, it is very important to actually write their name and state that I have visited here. Just look at the audacity of this person whose name is Sri Makaradhwaja Yogi, and he inscribes his name here on the walls. And why did I mention quote unquote audacity? Because this reads Sri Makaradhwaja Yogi 700. What does the 700 mean? It's not a date. He had 700 followers with whom he went and he engraved. The audacity comes here because he found a Shivalinga and on the Shivalinga he engraved his name. Just imagine, this actually is what I call the urge, you know, the urge to engrave his name. He wrote Sri Makaradhwaja Yogi 700. Now he went to a temple and he saw a band of followers like this, dancing and rejoicing, and just below you can find Sri Makaradhwaja 700 again. Now, so his inscription begin right from Chhattisgarh. He goes to Bihar, he goes to Bengal, he goes to Odisha, he goes to Bangladesh, and he writes everywhere Sri Makaradhwaja Yogi 700. Now here in Bangladesh, when we went for our field work, we found in Rajshahi Museum that on one of the pedestals of the images he wrote Makaradhwaja Yogi. Now there is no 700. It is being replaced by the word Shisha. So he had 700 Shishyas. And here we know that 700 actually stands for followers. And see, look at this. In Bogra Museum in Bangladesh, we got another figure where, I would just like to highlight. Here's the inscription, Makaradhwaja Yogi Shisha again. And I'll just quickly show you, he, irrespective of Shaiva sculptures or Vaishnava sculptures, he appropriated everything and wrote his name. So now you have a Vishnu image, and on this again, you have the inscription, Makaradhwaja Yogi Shisha. So, you know, this actually is the urge to engrave your name wherever you go, and just to note that I was here. I came here with my followers. Now, let us now go to something very unconventional, you know. All of you might be aware of the site of Dhar in Madhya Pradesh. Here, this is the actual inscription, this, which you cannot see actually because it's in a glass case. And this is a 82-line inscription. Just imagine, it's larger than a person's height, and there are 82 lines here. And it's a unique inscription because it's a literary inscription. What are literary inscription? When you create a kind of a literature and you want to write it, literatures are supposed to be written in manuscripts or passed on orally. Why to engrave it on the stone? It is not possible because of the voluminous nature of the work. It is not possible to engrave it. But literature or literary creations were often limited to a particular reader group. So whoever will read the manuscript will come to know. So beyond this reader group, if you really want others to know, then you have to create something which lives for posterity. So here is the urge to create something unique, unconventional, and you want to communicate it to posterity. Some literary creations were turned into epigraphic document, implicitly confirming the importance of the later. So this is found inside a mosque, a masjid, which is the Kamal Maula Mosque. And inside this mosque, you find a beautiful place. It's a Jame mosque, so of course you have a huge area inside. So I'm just showing you a few images of this mosque to understand, how huge it is. And here you have a prashasti. What exactly is a prashasti? It's a eulogy of a ruler, all of us know. But here the creator hails from Bengal. His name is Madan. And he hails from Gaur. He goes all the way to Dhar in Madhya Pradesh and becomes the Rajaguru, the royal preceptor of this person whose name is Arjunavarman. So the king's name is Arjunavarman, and Madana becomes the royal preceptor of Arjunavarman. And Arjunavarman is a connoisseur of literature. He himself also creates a lot of literature. He has written a commentary known to Amaru Shatakam named Rasika Sanjeevani. And this person creates this beautiful literary piece, which is not only a prashasti, he says it is a natika. So there is a difference between a nataka and a natika. Natika will have only 4 episodes and the natak will have 10 episodes. So it's a small abridged version of play with 4 episodes, and now it has been engraved on stone. All of us know that brevity is very difficult thing, the most difficult thing on earth. And here I'll just show you the inscription. This is only line number 1 to 26. So you can imagine an 82-line inscription. And how beautifully it has been engraved. It is a work of art. And the Shilpin who has created it, he has been called a Shilpin, an artist. And his name is Ramadeva. And he is a hereditary Shilpin. His father was also an artist. And see, this is line number 26 to 54. Then this is line number 55 to 82. Here is the inscription actually. So you can see these are stampages. And what does the Natika actually say? But if it is a Natika, the question which arises here is that why is he calling it a prashasti? Because at the same time it is a prashasti and a Natika. So the hero of the play is Arjunavarman, the reigning king. And look at the characters of the play. We have the Sutradhar and the Nati, of course. In every play you have the Sutradhar and Nati. Then you have the king who is the hero of the play. Then the heroine is Parijat Manjari, who is not the queen. So the name of the drama is Parijat Manjari. And he uses 3 words. And Madan is an excellent composer who uses metaphors, So he says that the heroine's name is Parijat Manjari, her name is Vijayashri, her name is Jayashri. So he uses 3 names for the heroine. And then the chief queen is Sarvakala, who knows all the arts, And then you have the Vidushaka, you have a queen's attendant named Kanakalekha, a royal gardener named Kusumakar. Just note the selection of the word Kusumakar. Akar means mine, the mines of flowers. So what a beautiful name for a royal gardener. And then gardener's wife is Vasanta Leela. That is the spring, you know that, the play of the spring. Now, here he creates the drama in very short. I'll say what is exactly a Manjari. When the mango trees bloom, we have the Manjaris here. So, what is Parijat Manjari? Parijat is a divine flower, and the buds of the divine flower the bunch of the buds are actually Parijat Manjari. And who exactly is Arjuna Varman, the reigning king, who actually wages a war against the Chalukya ruler Jayasingha, and he calls himself the incarnation of Raja Bhoj. So that's the way he projects himself, and he has his copper plates ranging from 1211, 1213, 1218, and as I said, it is the composer of Rashika Sanjeevani, the commentary to Amarushatakam. And we have already talked about the Rajaguru who hailed from Gaur, and now you see this drama, which was written by Madan, was commissioned by the Saraswati Surasadana, that is, here there was a Saraswati temple, and this Saraswati is a Jaina Saraswati, and this person is actually being commissioned to write a new play, a fresh play which will be enacted on the Vasanta Panchami. And he creates this Prashasti a play, and you can see the Jaina Saraswatis which are now in the British Museum. Very quickly I'll talk about the act. I won't go into the details of this, you can read it. The first act is called Vasantotsava. All of you know, that's the spring. And here, what happened? Arjunavarman has defeated the army of Jayasingha, and Jayasingha's army is retreating, and Arjunavarman actually is sitting and rejoicing when the gods shower flowers on Arjunavarman, and this flower falls on Arjunavarman's chest and turns into a beautiful lady who is Parijata Manjari. And Arjunavarman accepts Parijata Manjari as the, you cannot say a wife, but it's called Yuddhanta Shuddhanta Sahacharinim. At the end of the war, he is accepting her as Sahachari. And here they are together, and a time comes when they have to go back to their own kingdom. And end of the day, when they go back to the kingdom, then Arjunavarman cannot take Parijat Manjari to the palace because there had been no social marriage. Now, he sends Parijat Manjari with Kusumakar, who is the royal gardener, and entrusts him to Kusumakar and asks that Vasanta Leela, his wife, should take care of Parijat Manjari. Parijat Manjari is placed in a palace which is made out of emerald. What a beautiful way of conceptualizing that a bouquet of bud will stay in green. So all around the palace is of emerald, and there Parijat Manjari is staying. Where exactly? This is the Dharagiri hill, that's the Mandu area. And there Parijat Manjari is staying, and the king forgets about Parijat Manjari. He gets busy into his royal course, and finally one day Vasanta arrives, that is the spring. And when the spring has arrived, at that time, the king is actually offered by the queen that now I am celebrating this Vasantotsava by marrying the mango tree to the Madhavilata. So it's symbolic, marrying of mango trees to the Madhavilata, so that the fruits of the mangoes are, like you can say, legal fruits, and they will not get worms and so on. So here what happens is that the marriage takes place in the royal garden. Here ends the first act. And the second act is called Tadanka Darpan, which is in the royal garden. And in this royal garden, the queen is performing the ritual. Arjunavarman is there, and Parijat Manjari also comes because this is a public space, the garden. And Parijat Manjari is looking at the whole ritual from behind a tree. And the queen is wearing huge earrings, and on her earring falls the shadow of Parijat Manjari, which the king sees. So the king is not attentive to the ritual, he's not attentive, he's not looking at the queen, but he is looking at the reflecting earring which has the image of Parijat Manjari reflecting, and he's reminded of Parijat Manjari, and the queen realizes that the king is not attentive. She immediately recedes to the royal palace. That's the way of showing her anger and anguish. So she goes back to the royal palace. Now the king is in dilemma what to do, whether to go to the queen or whether to go to Parijat Manjari. And at this juncture, what happens is that the Vidushaka comes in and he says, killed and eaten are the same. If you kill a bird, you get the same sin. If you eat it after killing, you get the same sin. So you can decide what to do. So the king goes to Parijat Manjari and the queen is now counting time. And she finds her husband is not back and she immediately removes the earring and gives it to Kanakalekha and says, go and give this to the king. So Kanakalekha arrives to this Dharagiri palace and there she hands over the reflecting earring and the king understands what has happened and then says to Kanakalekha, please save me. So here ends line number 82 of the inscription. Now, you might be really wondering, the name of the inscription is Parijat Manjari. She's the heroine. And here we find this cannot end here. At least as much as I understand, how can an inscription end here? So, she cannot be the heroine of the play, you know. So, a beautiful thing which Madan has done, while beginning the play he wrote, I am getting this engraved on 2 sets of black stone. If he would not have written this, we would have never known what was happening. You know, so we have lost the second stone, which had the 2 more acts of the play. So this is only the first 2 acts of the play. And believe me, I think everybody in the audience would really like to know what was there in the rest of the 2 acts. Isn't it? Of course, yes, we know what happened. Why? Superb, superb. You know, I'm just really, I really want to remove each and every stone from the mosque to find out the inscription, actually, if allowed. Anyway, now, something very beautiful is that Madan was trying to show that I have read a lot of plays. I know how to write a play. And he was trying, his urge to become a kind of a Kalidasa. Because this is a typical Vasantotsava Nataka where you have a temporary amnesia of the king, where the king will forget what happens to the lady who has come in. And then finally what will happen is that the queen will realize that, okay, the other woman who is there in the palace also belongs to a royal lineage. And then, of course, she will accept her as the second wife of the king or the third wife or whatever. Now, here, very beautifully, you know, Madan has composed this play as I feel, as an epigraphist. Because as an epigraphist, we hardly get such dramas on stone. And believe me, the other 2 dramas which we have is again in the Ajmer Mosque, Adhai Din Ka Jhopda. Here again we have it in the Dhar, Kamal Mola Mosque. So what was happening? Why are we finding them in the mosque? This is where the temple turned mosque, where you have got huge places where you can actually enact these dramas. Now, as I come towards the end of my presentation, here you find he was actually emulating Kalidasa's Malavikagnimetram, not Shakuntala. He was also emulating Sri Harsha's Ratnavali, Sri Harsha's Priyadarshika, where you have this Vasantotsava format. He was just trying to show this. But his urge went much beyond that, you know. While describing what is Vasanta, what is happening in the Vasantotsava part, he is describing how people are going in the streets, the amorous couples are going, and the king asks the queen, can you hear what they are singing? They are singing down there in the streets. So the king says, yes, they are singing Raga Hindol. And then what happens is that he describes what is Raga Hindol. See, Madan's urge to explain that he knows all kind of arts, you know, he knows how to compose plays, he has read everybody from Kalidasa to Sri Harsha, he also knows music, he comes from Bengal, so everything he wanted to show, that's what I call an urge. Here he is describing the raga from the beginning to the end, maintaining the passion, move the note sa and place it or fix it in the note ma, and then you do not use re. use the note dha, which should be less. And then he says in the higher octave, you can also use pa. So how many notes is he using? You know, we have gone into the detail of this and we found that it's a pentatonic rag where you use 5 notes. He forgot the ni actually. He should have mentioned that. And this is a Vasanta raga. If you take what Madan has written, this one will be rag Hemanta. And Hemant is to be sung in Hemanta Ritu. How can one sing Hemanta in Vasanta? So definitely it has to be a Vasanta raga. And what rag is it? Raga Hindol. So there are 2 raga Hindols. One is the Hindustani classical music raga Hindol and the other is the Carnatic classical raga Hindol. Both do not match with this. So there is another 3rd raga which is called Kaushithwani, which is also called Hindol at times and also called the Vasanta raga. And he was describing that. But he erred at that. So being an epigraphist, you have to be very careful not to judge, your creator. And so I've just shown you, this is the Deccan Rag Hindol. And before just ending this, I would like to mention that Raga Kaushithwani is also a pentatonic rag and definitely it's a Vasanta raga. So, the urge to show that I will not take your more time, I've already exceeded the time limit, I suppose. And just a line. Today I won't be able to demonstrate it, but just to show you what exactly is Kaushithwani and what kind of bandishes were done in Kaushithwani. One of the most famous bandishes is Ayori Basant Navala Rangalayo. So when a pentatonic raga is sung, it's like Ayuri basant naval rang layo kusum kaliyon se naval rang sajayo ayuri basant. So this is the kind of the thing which he was saying. Use sa, stay in ma, and then go ahead with the tha. So he knew little bit. So we have to be very careful because he was trying to explain a Vasanta raga. He was trying to say that the people do this, but definitely what he created is not something which we can say superlative. Though as an epigraphist, I feel he has done a marvelous job by doing this. But when you ask a Sanskritist, then they will say it's a very bad play, You should not read it as an example of Vasantotsavan genre of Natakas. Because definitely brevity is the most difficult thing. And when you have to write something like a play, then the whole rasa is missing, The pleasure which you get out of reading a play, that's missing because most of the words you have to cut, you have to accommodate that into a stone. And it was not a very easy task and Madana was not an expert in that, of course. So, but the urge is definitely incredible. That's what I would like to say. And I would like to say that definitely people should have engraved and not right now, but thanks to all the people who engraved their names on the stones, went to different monuments and documented that they are travelers and pilgrims, that we know so much about the presence of the masses, not only the kings and the people of the higher order. We know more and more about the masses, and I'll end with this, that one of the persons who saw the Barabar caves, such beautiful ones, which is polished much better than the tiles right now, wrote, Videsha Dhanasya Kirti. So it's created by foreign funding, definitely. He thought that it is not possible to create this by Indian funding. And much, much later, 700 years later, he wrote that this definitely has been created by foreign funding. And remember one thing, there is one stone on which Ashoka wrote his inscriptions in Girnar. All of you are aware of the Girnar stone, like Girnar stone inscription. There Ashoka wrote his inscription. He did not write about anybody else. Though he was aware that Chandragupta Maurya has created a beautiful lake there whose name is Sudarshan Lake, he did not mention. He did not want to mention that this lake was created by Chandragupta Maurya. His minister Tushashpa, who was a Yavana minister, created conduits to this beautiful lake. He did not mention Tushashpa. He only wrote his 14 rock edicts there. He wanted to mention about himself. But remember that much later in 150 CE, Rudradaman chooses this particular rock to write his inscription, and he mentions Chandragupta Maurya, he mentions Ashoka, and he, like Priyadarshi alias Ashoka, and he says he's trying to get his presence, among the stalwarts here, that I am also doing the same thing on this particular rock where Ashoka had written, where Priyadarshi has written. So this is the urge, actually. And again, after 450 years later, when Gupta rulers, Khandagupta writes his inscription on the same rock, he chooses not to mention Ashoka and not even to mention Rudradaman, just his own inscription. So this is how you can just be silent on the deeds of others and ignore the legacy. And the Rudradaman surge is too good, when he really wants to state that these are the people who had created, and I am also doing this here. Thank you so much for a patient listening. Thank you.